In a sign of worsening relations between China and the European Union, the European Parliament on Thursday halted the ratification of a new investment pact with China until Beijing lifted sanctions on EU politicians. The EU-China Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, agreed by negotiators in December last year, came about after 7 years of talks. It aimed to put EU companies on an equal footing in China and cement Beijing's status as a trusted trading partner. But relations between the two soured after the EU imposed sanctions on Chinese officials accused of the mass detentions of Muslim Uyghurs in the Xinjiang province. Beijing reacted and, in a tit-for-tat move, imposed sanctions on 10 EU politicians, as well as think tanks and diplomatic bodies. China's sanctions include 5 members of the EU Assembly and its Human Rights Subcommittee. EU lawmakers say the Chinese sanctions are not based on international law, while the bloc's measures, like those of Britain and the United States, tackle abuses of human rights upheld in the UN treaties. The Parliament said that EU-China relations will not continue as usual until China lifts the sanctions. Beijing denies any wrongdoing, and in response to the resolution, China's mission to the EU said that the investment agreement was mutually beneficial and not a favor from one side or the other. The impasse is a setback for both China and the EU. Ratification of the pact would have allowed greater protection of European investment and intellectual property rights in China. Activists and UN rights experts say at least 1 million Muslims are detained in camps in Xinjiang. China has denied any rights abuses in Xinjiang and says its camps provide vocational training and are needed to fight extremism. For more on the story, our correspondent Stuart Smith is joining us live from Brussels. Stuart, good to see you.
Yes, one of the MEPs who said about this commented that China had miscalculated and shot itself in the foot here, because this was a deal which took, indeed, as you said, 7 years to arrange, and then only in a few months was potentially jeopardised. Now, this is not the final word. MEPs have blocked this, saying that the only way they will agree to this deal is if China releases those sanctions on the European MEPs and other European institutions. That, though, was already something being considered. In the meantime, the European Commission still needs to do the legal work, the translation of the documents, so this deal would not have been ratified yet anyway. So the hope from the European Commission and the Beijing Ministry of Foreign Affairs is that in the meantime this can be resolved and there won't be any long-term delays to the deal, which would indeed bring benefits to both Europe and China, and was actually instigated by the European Union because it perceived an unfairness between the investment situation for European businesses in China, and yet China couldn't do the same in Europe. So that unfairness still exists, but MEPs taking this very personally when it was their members that were sanctioned for making these claims on human rights abuses in Xinjiang. China reacted almost in a tit-for-tat response by then the European MEPs also being blocked. So at the moment it seems like mostly a dispute between the Parliament and China, less between the Commission and China, which does mean there is potential here for some agreement to be found. But at the moment, certainly in the next few months, that's looking very unlikely.
Stuart, 30 of 599 votes in the European Parliament were in favour of opening up trade relationships. Maybe you can help us understand why exactly some were keen to get trading started with China again.
Well, yeah, 599 MEPs. There couldn't have been many more that wanted to block this. The difficulty is that Parliament sees it as a personal attack against them. Even people in the Parliament are free, or more free than the countries, to say how they feel about the situation in China, and many of them went ahead and did that, which China took offence to. But indeed, this investment deal is important. It would allow businesses to be able to invest in China, which they can't currently do at the moment. One other part of this deal, though, is that one of the things MEPs agreed as part of blocking this ratification is that looking towards US to take a tougher line on China, and also want to ensure that any potential trade deal with Taiwan isn't affected by this China trade deal. So it's not just about blocking, it's also sending a signal to China that the MEPs and the parliament won't be bullied when they decide to make decisions such as sanctioning Chinese officials.
So what is the current state of diplomatic or trade relationships that China has with Europe?
Well, as things stand, it's a bit divided, because the way the European Union works, for example, is that the Commission and the Parliament are separate, even though technically representing the larger bulk of the EU. And so you might say right now China's relations with the European Commission are quite good. They're both on the same page in that both of these institutions want this trade deal to go ahead. They both believe it's mutually beneficial. The Parliament, though, taking a stand and saying not. But in general, if we look to certain EU member states like Germany, it's not good either, because Germany is looking at some sort of scheme where businesses would not be able to invest in Xinjiang, would not be able to take labour or products from Xinjiang for these same reasons. The accusations of human rights abuses on a huge scale being taken in China. If that policy that Germany proposes goes through, German companies would not be able to take products from Xinjiang. And there are also calls by the European Parliament to extend that to some sort of European-wide scheme. So the whole of the EU would not be able to accept products or work or do business with Xinjiang. So right now, relations not looking very good.
Stuart Smith, live from Brussels, thank you very much for talking to WION.